and here we go. I'm going to share screen.
I can ask one question about just the economy of the. I forgot it now, but there was a contrast between Mislavish and I forgot. There was a contrast.
Islapshus, yeah, there's the Indian of Islapshus and that and well, there's. Let me explain a little bit more.
Yeah,
it's actually a very important concept in Chassidus, which is it's only really spelled out very well by Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Mihomel.
It was his Yortzei Yesod Shebi Yesod.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Yitzchak Isaac Mihomel in a maamer called the maamer Hashiflus VaHasimcha.
Oh, what a maamer!
I think it's either Perek Aleph or Perek Beis. It seems to me, my memory is correct. It's Perek Beis.
Rav Ginsburg, you learned that a lot. You learned that.
Yeah. Rabbi Ginsburg likes that maamer a lot. Yeah, that is correct. So he speaks about three madregas: Hishtalshlus, Hislapshus, and Hashra.
Right.
And basically, he says that the development of Kabbalah went through those three stages. The early development of Kabbalah, which from the Zohar to the Ramak, emphasized primarily the inyan of Hishtalshelus, right? And therefore, you'll find, this is where all the spheres are spoken about, and the Oilimus and so on and so forth. Then the inyan of the Arizal was Hislapshus, and therefore the Arizal talks about Partsufim. He doesn't speak. He speaks about Hishtalshelus as well, but he adds a new inyan, which is not emphasized as much in the previous Kabbalah, certainly not in the Ramak and others. And that's Hislapshus, which has to do with the interaction of the various Partsufim, one with the other, the interaction of Partsufim. Then along comes the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov introduces yet another new concept, which is called Hashra. Now, Hashra is it's actually just in the last two chapters in Tanya that we've been learning this week and last week. That's where it talks primarily about the inyan of Hashra. Hashra is Elokus. In other words, Elokus as it is, without going through all the inyonim of Islapshus and Ishtalshlus and all those other inyonim, but the etzem of Elokus is shoyre on an inyan, ba'oifet shel makif, but it's shoyre. And this is essentially really what we're talking about over here. That's the difference between the spheroids, which are the spheros pnimim, and the sphera of Keser, which is the inyan of Makifim, Soivev, is essentially the difference between Hishtalshlus, Hislapshus on the one hand, and Hashra on the other hand. The whole inyan of Keser is that it's shoyre, and it's coiled everything together, and not lefi the darga of the inyan on which it is shoyre. So let's just summarize where we're up to. And that's basically runs right into what we spoke about last week when, let's just do the kitzur over here. Everyone can see the screen, I assume, yes? Yeah? Okay, so he began to explain the difference between Keser and the Sharei HaSfiros, the other Sfiros, the Yavayer, and he began to explain Hamoshel B'Nefesh. The entire moshel over here is the moshel of the nefesh for the spheroids. He wants to get to the nimshal, which is the spheroids, but we're doing the moshel in the meanwhile. And the moshel has its own problems in terms of explanation, but in any event, we're using the nefesh as a moshel. The koiches of the nefesh are koiches pnimiyim. Masha ein kein Keser, as we'll explain in a second. Because it's an or pnimi, so the oil is melumash dafka in a kli that's shaykh to it. In other words, koyach haseichel in the moyach and koyach mido is shebelev and so on and so forth. And every sphera and every koyach is melumash in that particular thing that is it's melumash primarily in that inyan which is its kli. Yes, it's true. It's melubash in other koiches as well. For instance, koich seichel in the yad. But he explains that he says over here, Yazki bekitzer inyan is lapshus seichel by koich shlamata mimeno. That seichel is melubash in the other koiches, but it's only a ha'ora of the of it, and it's melubash in the koich and not in the aver. It's melubash in the koich and not in the aver. In other words, seichel is melubash in the koich hatziyur, but not in the hand which does the tziyur, which does the drawing. Okay.
Can I ask you about Hashra? I hope this is not off topic, but Hashra, is there any Keli by Hashra?
No.
I mean, there is no. But there's a Gila. There's a Gila of Or without a Keli.
There's a Gila of Or without a Keli, but it's not Lefi Erech. It's not Lefi Erech because it's not Melubash. There's no Islapshus, and therefore there's no Helem, as we'll explain in this coming Perek. There's
So
no
it's a
Inyan
Gila
of Helem.
that's not, but it's not seen. I mean, in other words, there's no way to chap. It's a Gila without any perception or cognizance. No Keli.
There is, well, let's not call it a Keli, but there is, it's not a Keli in the sense of a Keli in which the Or is Melubash, but there is an inyan of an awareness, a consciousness of that inyan of Hashra. And the reason for that is because since we have the inyan of Yechidish B'Nefesh, which is that Madrega, it's shaykh to that Madrega which is Shoire, therefore it can be sort of apprehended. Let's not say understood, but it can be apprehended in some way or another.
Okay. So Hashra is always when the market, when we talk about soybean market being felt, right? We use the term Hashra because there's no hislapshus of market.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I had a question that is it correct to summarize that the point that he's making in this chapter is that so there is some sort of both bi-directional influence. It's the or influencing the Keli, Keli influencing the or.
Yeah. Well, he's going to explain in the coming chapter in Perek Gimel. He's going to explain that. Mm-hmm. He's going to explain that to a greater extent. Let's just there's something that I think I need to point out also. In the inyan of Hishtoshelus, so that's Mamash and Or Pnimi, right? Hislapshus is also to do with the Or Pnimi, but it's Mamshich and Or Makif. In other words, when the Partzufim and Melubashim Zebazeh, let's say Zohan Malchus, or Mislapshim Zebazeh, then it's Mamshich and Or Makif and Or Soivev. But it's not Or Etzem, it's only an Or Soivev, it's only a Makif, and it's a relative Makif. It's a Makif that's relative to that particular Yichud, right? But it's not Ha-Makif, it's not, in other words, not Koich Ha-Etzem. Masha Ein Kain Hashra is the in of Etzem. I asked Rabbi Ginsburg about this once, but I didn't get an answer.
What question?
The Locher, the Inyan of Ishtoshelus is the Inyan of Ishtoshelus is shaykh to in Avoida, the Inyan of Ishtoshelus is shaykh to Havona v'Hasoga. When it comes to the Inyan of Hislapshus, so that's the avoid is the avoid of Yichudim, right? Doing Yichudim, like the result Yichudim. When it comes to Hashra, so L'choyer the Inyan is Dveikus. Dveikus is the Neshama L'mayla. I didn't get an answer for him, but it seems to me that is looking over Yitzhak Hazmi Hamel's Yonim. It seemed to me that's what he says, and I've looked elsewhere as well in Mamorim from the Rebbe Rashab and from the Rebbe and so on, and it seems to me that the Veikus is the
is in other words, it's saying a Bittul Metzias and Kabbalah's all and Bittul Metzias.
I would say Bittul Metzias. Kabbalah's all is Lamat Min HaSeichel, whereas this I think is Lamala Min HaSeichel.
Okay.
Although, let's not denigrate Kabbalah's soul. It's a very great thing. But in general, in a general sense, Kabbalah's all is lamata min haseichel. That's the way it's usually described. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's continue now. V'zeu hasiba she'ha'ivorim oisim hakshoma b'hakoichos. So that's the Indian that Eliezer just spoke about, that the every koyach of the nefesh that's melubash in a kli, so there's a hakshoma of the koyach. In other words, the koyach becomes a little bit less refined and a little bit less sensitive to inyonim of elokus. It becomes more fagrept by being melubash in a kli. And the opposite is also true, al-haipech. Even though it becomes less refined when it becomes melubash in a kli, nevertheless, la-haipech, the koyach are manhig the aver, and the aver is bottled to the koyach. Why? Because it knows that that's its chayus, that's its life force. If it doesn't, if your arm starts arguing with the koyach hamaisa, so the koyach hamaisa kaviyocha will just leave and say goodbye. I got better things to do, right? And go figure out for yourself what to do, how to move yourself, and so on. That's why in Sefer Yetzirah the koyachs are called the manhigim. The manhig the various evorim, manhigim oisam. It doesn't come about in a way that the nefesh forces the aver, but it's in a way of his galus. The koyach is nisgali in the aver, and therefore the aver has the ability to do what it does. And the more refined the aver is, the more refined is the koyach, the less fagrep the koyach becomes in that particular aver, and therefore the more it can aspire to higher giluyim of the nefesh. For example, someone who's got a grober kop, so he's only going to be able to think of sichlim on a very, very low level. Unfortunately, we see this by some of the academics, especially the Jewish academics in Jewish studies. They have a very coarse understanding of inyonim and Chassidus, and in particular Kabbalah. Chassidus and Kabbalah. They have a very grob understanding of it, and they take it mamish literally. Some of them, and you can see where their moyach is so unrefined that they're just they don't chap what it's even talking about. And then
you have to force them to learn chassidus. Behechach, you have to.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
But look, that's what I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind. I don't know if it's not interrupting. That's what my question was before. Actually, I remember now. Behechach and not behechach. Is it really? It's both happening. In other words, is there an Indian by the koichas and the environment? For instance, there's depending on the penimis and chitzonius. In other words, is there an Indian of they do follow naturally the environment will follow the koichas naturally, and then at the same time there's an Indian that they're independent and they have to be forced in a sense to. Is there that aspect also? Because we did say both, but I wasn't sure exactly how to apply it.
Well, he does say that it's not behechrich, which means that if there's a heskim between them. In other words, the Aver knows that this is its koyach, and it's not going to start, it's not going to start arguing with the, so to speak, with the koyach in order to, to get some other kind of deal.
I mean, sort of like the or has an atiyah to the keli already, or the keli has an atiyah for that.
Both of them, yeah. There's absolutely both are true.
And at the same time, they're all be'etzim. They're also something unique.
Yeah. Definitely, there's the kli and the or are not. The kli is not just a hemshech of the or. It's a different mitzias.
Okay.
It comes from a different place, actually. The truth is that the kli comes from soivev. Ultimately, not from Pnimi.
The Rishima, right?
From the Rishima, exactly. Right.
Okay.
Okay. Which is the Koch Gvul in Soivev. Okay. In the coming Perek, he's going to explain this somewhat more barichus. Let's just learn it, and we'll see it as we get into it. Onam ikar inyan bazehu. לפי שהכוח זה פנימיים בעצם, In other words, the koichos are an or pnimi milchatchila. It's not that they became an or pnimi by being melubash in the kli. They were an or pnimi to start off with. This goes back to a whole discussion, or perhaps you could say disagreement, in Kabbalah, in Kabbalah, whether the oiris are pshutim or whether the or is or pashut, or whether there's a tziyur in the or. As the machlok is really between earlier Mekubalim really and the Arizal, perhaps even the Ramak and the Arizal. Because for the Ramak and earlier Mekubalim, by them the or was an or pashut. It was like you pour water into a kli. I mean, the Ramak says that. It says it explicitly, exactly using that motional. If you pour water into a red kli, then the water looks red. If you pour into a blue kli, it looks blue. But the water has no color, and it's the same water that will go into any kli. The Arizal says no. There's a tzir in the oil itself. The oil has certain, as you put it, Avner, has a certain netiya. This type of ore has a certain netiya to that type of kli. And in other words, the al derech moshel the koyach hanefesh, koyach haseichel is not going to be melubash in the leif as the koyach of the leif, right? It's not going to be melubash in the kaved as the koyach of the kaved. Yes, a ha'or of it might be melubash in the leif or in the kaved or in the raglaim or whatever it may happen to be, but it's not the etzem koyach because it's not the proper kli for it. Now we can understand that by way of a moshel of a prism. I see a nice picture of a prism over here. When the light goes through, initially, goes into the piece of glass as the prism, right? So it all appears to be the same color light. But in the light itself, there's different madrigas, and they come out through different madrigas in the kli. In other words, because this is thicker, so it comes out a purple light or a blue light or whatever. Because this is a thinner part, it comes out as red light, more energy, less energy, and so on and so forth. So it divides up, it sort of splits up. So the same thing is true of the or hanefesh. The or hanefesh appears to be a single oil before it goes into the prism. But then it splits up into the prism because there's certain in the prism because there's these are tchunas that are in the or itself, at least according to the Arizal. These are in yonim in the or itself according to the Arizal, not according to the Ramak. And we'll see this as we go on a little bit further. Okay, so hainu shuba'im b'hagbola min hanefesh ad shehem be'erech liyislabash b'kelim. They come in hagbola from the nefesh itself. Now, what part of the nefesh is going to explain that the hagbola of the koichos in the nefesh are only chitzonis on nefesh, not the pnimis on nefesh. They're not the pnimis on nefesh. And the pnimis on nefesh is or yochid, right? It's all chelek elokam mal, and that's it. There's no, but the inyan of the nefesh that's melubash, that becomes melubash lefi erech, the inyan that it's supposed to affect, the inyan that it's supposed to bring about in the world. Okay, let's see a little bit further. So in other words, the oil that's melumash in the moyach, let's say, is the chitzonius, or rather the lowest madrega, the madrega acharayna, the bechina acharayna, in the or haseichel. Shnikra geshem sheberuchni. And of course, the kli is going to be the ruchni shebegeshem, shebegashmi, right? So the lowest madrega of a particular koyach of the nefesh, as it is in the nefesh, is called the geshem sheberuchni. Achli yosh hakoyach zahem apnimiyim be'etzem. Al kein dakos ha'evorim nikraim ruchni shebegashmi hu bechinas kli lahalbish lahatvis es geshem sheberuchni. The kli is able to be makabel that because the pneumius of the kli, in other words, the ruchni shebegashmi, is able to relate to the gashmi sheberuchni in the oir, and the gashmi and the ruchni shebeoir. Let's put it this way: the gashmi sheberuchni is suited to the ruchni shebegashmi of the kli. The gashmi sheberuchni in the oir is suited to the gashmi sheberuchni of the kli. The Ruchni of the Gashmi of the Kli.
So we're talking about Ishtalshalis, right? Within the Koiches, yeah?
Definitely there's an in of Ishtalshalis in the Koiches, although here we're talking about how the Koiches are Melubashim Zebazeh. But nevertheless, you're right that it's Ishtalshalis because it's the lowest Madrega, the most chitonious aspect of it, that's Melubash, not the Pneumius of it, because the Pneumius of it, as he's going to explain, is part of the Nefesh itself. Well, he'll explain that soon. Vagam da nefesh hu bilti mugbal. Even the nefesh itself is bligvul. The nefesh itself is oir. It doesn't have, the nefesh itself is, so to speak, that white light before it gets broken up into the various colors of the spectrum. Right? The nefesh itself is not. It doesn't come in colors of the spectrum. He'll explain. The koiches themselves are gvul, and we'll see that there's an inyan of gvul in the oil itself, as we'll see later on in the nimshal. So bechinos gvul, hein koiches pratim, kumo koicha chochma koicha chesed, etc., etc. That's where you have the hagbola. V'hein imtsoim klulim b'nefesh. You have these koiches that are kolul in the nefesh, just like the various possibilities for red light, blue light, green light, etc., are kolul in the white light. They're kolul there, right? In the hispashtus, they become blue and red and so on and so forth. But in the or itself, they're not yet that, because they haven't been slowed down by the kli, so to speak, right? Now, this is an important point. It's not that the koiches hanefesh are hispashtus of the nefesh. The koiches hanefesh are the chitzonius dikatzir of the nefesh. What's the difference? Because the ha'ora of something atzmi remains atzmi. It doesn't become a davar mugbal. A ha'ora of atzmus is still atzmus. A ha'ora of the etzem hanefesh is still etzem hanefesh. Mm-hmm. So this is a very important point over here, that these inyonim that are the koiches as they can be melumash later on in the evarim are klulim b'nefesh, but they're not ha'ora of the nefesh. In other words, in a sense, it's the koach ha'gvul sheba'or, which is a different thing. The koach ha'gvul sheba'or comes from somewhere else. The koach ha'gvul shebanefesh, in other words, that aspect of nefesh that can be melumash in a kli, is not part of the etzem ha'nefesh.
So the koach ha'gvul has the same pshitus as it is in kolol, as it's kolol, and the spashmus of it.
Yes, but the koach ha'gvul is in a sense a different inyan from the koach ha'bligvul of the nefesh, and therefore the koach ha'gvul can be melubash, but not the koach ha'bligvul. Yeah. He'll explain that later when we get to the nimshal. The kol ha'ora haru lefi oifen ha'etzem. So any ha'ora, if it was simply a ha'ora and not a koach mugbal in the nefesh, if it was just the ha'ora of the nefesh, then it will come out like the nefesh. It wouldn't be melubash in the kli. It couldn't be melubash in the kli because it's a ha'ora of the nefesh, and the nefesh is bligvul. Ha'ora is also bligvul. But a koach is enem ha'ora me'etzem ha'nefesh. Ki im masha nefesh imi yoysa bilti mugbal be'etzem. Nevertheless, hari kolu harihu koilo ba'atzmoi koichoi shehem bechinas koiches mugbalim be'etzem. Right, these koiches are koiches which are klulim in the nefesh, but they are not the nefesh itself. So in other words, the nefesh is the etzem bilti mischalek into koiches. The koiches are sort of an added dimension of the nefesh, the chitzonius of the nefesh. They're not the nefesh itself. All right, so he says over here, the difference between noisa hakoichos. Noisa hakoichos means it has the possibility of koichos coming out of it, but not that the koichos, it's not built out of the koichos. It's not like a machine which has parts, and the machine is just the sum of its parts. The nefesh is not the sum of its koichos. There's the nefesh, and there's the koichos and nefesh, which are the potential for the nefesh to be melubash in a kli to do a certain function. Right? That's noisa hakoiches. Noisa hakoiches doesn't mean that the koiches are the bepoil. They're there only in a potential. They're there bekoyach or beyechoiles afilu. Right? As he'll explain later on. V'sham hem bechinas achdus mamish. Everything there is bechinas achdus. Shanefesh achasi. It's not that it comprises of various parts. It's the koach haseichel, and that's the koach hahiluch, and that's the koach midas, and so on. It's not like that at all. It's the nefesh is achas, and so on, right? Gam shenosa es hakoiches ba'atzma. But it's noise of the koiches in itself. Okay. Well, masha nefesh koleles besoicha koiches, and this is koilel the koiches, not noise of the koiches. Noise of the koiches talks about the etzema nefesh. That the etzema nefesh has the possibility for being for producing koiches.
And this is where it would not be moshel would not be the melanimshel of the light, right? Because in the light, all these different colors, right, the different spectrum, they are physically present in the light.
Right. That you're right, but that would be where the koiches are koilules betoicha, right? They koilules besoicha. The koiches, the light is koil besoicha, the various colors. Masha Einkein, the yechoiles laha'ir, as I'll explain later on, the ability to be mayor. That's noise koiches, but it's not koilul koiches. Yeah.
That's in a hiyuli state. So you might say.
Yes. So as he says over here, "Ava masha nefesh koleles b'soicha koiches ein ze asmus nefesh." That's not asmus nefesh, right? Asmus nefesh is not koilul koiches. It's noise koiches. Yes. Okay. Omnam hakoiches kamo shehem kluli b'nefesh, harehem gam ken b'chinas b'li gvul. When the koiches are melubash in the aver, then they're b'chinas hakbola. When the koiches are in the nefesh, they're b'chinas b'li gvul. Right? They're b'chinas b'li gvul because they're not melubash yet. It's only his lapshus that causes them to become mugbal. But when they're in the nefesh itself, and the metzias koiches klal, they're not yet the metzias of koiches as they would be in the aver, and they're not melubash yet. Yedua the koich haseichel hahiyuli ha'atzmi hakalu be'etzem ha'nefesh and b'chinas sichli klal chulu. V'chein b'shar koich, the same thing applies. So in other words, the koich ha'yuli, when we say that the nefesh is noise koiches, that's even a higher madrega than simply the hiyuli. Right? The hiyuli is where there's a potential for this particular koich or that particular koich. We'll see later on, the inyan in the oil would be the difference between hayechoiles laha'ir and etzem ha'or. Where you have the inyan of hiyuli asked me, that's like the etzem ha'or. Right? That's where the etzem ha'nefesh. But it's etzem ha'nefesh k'mo sheklulim be'etzem ha'nefesh and not k'mo she noise etzem ha'nefesh, which would be the inyan of yechoiles laha'ir.
How do you touch noise again, please? Noise.
There's no good touch, but I mean literally you translate it as it bears the inyan of koiches. In other words, it's not shoylel the inyan of koiches. It doesn't completely deny them or negate them completely. It's noise, but it's not koiches that you would be able to find divisions in the nefesh where this is the koich is over here on the left side and that koich on the right side. It doesn't work like that. Yeah, it's noise means it's in a sense it's soyvil koiches. It has a potential for the koich to come out in a certain way. Okay. And that's only ha'ora. The nefesh has to be mitzumtzam in order to. Oh, sounds like shooting in the backyard. Okay.
What's in me?
Did anyone hear those sounds? Like someone's shooting a gun out there. All right. We're learning Chassidus somewhat. Okay, so
it's fireworks, Memorial Day, no? Something like that.
That must be what it is. Yeah. Okay. All right. You saved the neighborhood.
Hopefully.
Not the gun.
Yeah. All right. So that's a tzimtzum nefesh. When the in order for the koach to be malubish in an area, that can only come about through tzimtzum nefesh. And the same thing is true in order for the oil to be malumash in a kli. When we're talking about the spheroids, that comes about through tzimtzum oil. And there's various levels of tzimtzum, as we will see later on. So again, tzimtzum nefesh metzamtzem is atzma bichdei liislamish ba'ivor haguf liyoz b'chinas chayus pnimi. In order to become a chayus pnimi for the guf. And they come the koyach hanefesh, the geshem shebekoyach hanefesh, the gashmias and the ruchnias, is metzamtzem itself to the extent that it can be melumash in the ruchnias begashmias, the ruchnias of the koyach. While they say hein boim ba'agbola shem be'erech b'chinas haruchnias shebe'evorim liyois nitfas bohem. Okay? Good. וזהו גם כן הסיבה מה שהאור והחייס פנימי של הנפש בא בכנס ישחלקוס באיברי הגוף. That's why the koichos of the nefesh come into, when they're malubish in the nefesh, they come into a bechina of yischalkus. They get kind of divided up, just like we saw with the prison. In other words, the koich nefesh in the roish is a much more refined koich than the koich nefesh sheberegel. The koich nefesh is the grobst of the koiches, right? It's only a koich hiluch. Masha ein kain the koich ha-seichel, koich ha-bina, koich ha-chochma, v'chulu, is a much more refined kind of a thing. She'einu b'shavu b'chol ha'evorim. It's not the same in all the evorim. She'einu doime or v'chayas ha-nefesh, k'mo shu b'roish, k'mo shu b'guf. Shimi yoish ha-roshu kotam b'kamus, even, and it doesn't depend on the size of the kli, because the head itself is small in area compared with the legs, right? It doesn't depend on the size of the kli, it depends on the refinement of the kli, right? She'ima yoish ha-roshu kotam b'kamus l'gabi ha-guf, as we've been learning recently in Tanya, that the Iker Gilui of the Nefesh is Dafka in the Roish, and there's a very interesting discussion of this Inyan in the Rebbe Rashab, where in his Sichas, where he was talking about, he was discussing with the Hasidim on Yutis Kislev, I think it was. With Yutis Kislev, he was discussing with his Hasidim where the Alter Rebbe began his Hasidus. Did the Alter Rebbe begin his Hasidus with Haskola, not with Haskola, I'm sorry, with Hasoga or with Avoida? What is the beginning of Hasidus, with Hasoga or Avoida? And he comes to the conclusion, Mustama Hasoga, because there's very little written from the Alter Rebbe himself on the Inyan of Avoida. So he reckons that it starts from Hasoga. And therefore, from Hasoga develops Avoida. So the Iker, and why is that? Because the Iker Gilu HaNefesh Hu B'Roish Dafka. And therefore, that's where you have to start. You have to start with Hasoga. Okay.
Isn't that the difference between Reb Isaac and Reb Hillel? Parch?
That's a good observation. L'chayra, that would be the difference between them. Reb Hillel begins with the Inyan of Avodah, Masha Enkai, and Reb Isaac begins with the Inyan of Haskola. Yeah. But the Rebbe Rashab concludes that that's the way it is. That Alter Rebbe started with the Inyan of Haskola, and then he goes on. There are some very interesting things in the Rebbe Rashab Sichos, in Torah Shalom. Very interesting stuff. Like he said, nevertheless, the Ikka Inyan of that was Dafka the Mittler Rebbe, and not the Alter Rebbe.
The Rambam.
Well, the Rambam of Chassidus was the Rebbe Rashab.
Oh, that's Rebbe Rashab.
But the Rambam says exactly that. Doesn't he say that in Yesoda HaVeira? He says that Abraham hikir es boiroi. Right? Hitchil shoytet b'machshavtoi, v'hikir es boiroi. Right? In other words, he also, the way the Rambam sees it, is things began from Hasoga by Abraham Avinu. So that's the derech in Yiddishkeit. In any event, let's continue. The gilu from the nefesh is flew oif in a kli. Since the kli hamoyach is the most refined and the most elevated, therefore it's going to be makabel the most oil. Shachayis Ba bebchinas islapshus v'tfisa lefi mezigas hakli kano. Therefore, the mezigas hakli hamoyach is the most refined. The mezigas hakli haregel is the most unrefined. Okay, lefi oifen dakus hakli hu gilor hanefesh gilor hanefesh. The haroish hu mezigas hakov bebchinas chomer dak. Since the brain is a chomer dak, as we know that the cells in the brain are actually very different from all the rest of the cells in the body. It's a completely different structure of cell because it's much more refined, and that's why it is like that. It's much more shaykh to have the gilu of the gilu hanefesh. And similarly, someone has a kilkul in the moyach is not able to makabel seichel. Al kain meir sham or hanefesh begilu yoiser. Much more than in the rest of the goof. The highest koiches the nefesh are meir dafka in the moyach. But goof is muta or legabi arosh. It's a much lower koyach. It might be more power, more energy, and so on. But it is actually, I don't even know of more energy because when a person really occupies themselves with deep thought, it's actually very exhausting. And anyone who's ever been maayin in anything, you'll see that it's much more tiring than going for a walk, for example. Yeah. In any event, beguf hu beginas miuta or legabe arosh she'or nefesh mitzumtzam sham becomes mitzumtzam. Okay. Uberegel shu beginas chomer av beyoser al ken gam or nefesh mitzumtzam sham beyoser. The Ora Nefesh is much more mitzumtzam over there. More can be slapshus hakoiches zebazeh. Similarly, with the slapshus hakoiches, not the slapshus hakoiches in the avarium, but the slapshus hakoiches zebazeh. Koach hasechel sheberei bayah is melubash in koach hatziyur shebeyad and so on. The slapshus koiches zebazeh. Shakoach elyon mislabash bekoach hatachton. The higher koach is melubash in the lower koach. Seichel in the koach hatziyur. And so on, koyach harikud, whatever it is. There it comes into his chalkos. Yeah, there's different madrigas in this particular unit. Motions we already explained this in here. Yes. The only aspect of seichel that you get in koyach tenua is seichel ma'asi, the seichel which is shaykh to ma'aseh, seichel which is shaykh to movement. In other words, let's say a big, sports guy. One of the things that he does, alpha B, that's definitely a seichel behind the movements that a sportsman does. Nevertheless, it's lefi oifen haguf. The guf sort of makes that in order to be mamshich that in a seichel, it has to be something that becomes a habit in the guf, and then the guf moves according to that particular seichel that's shaykh to it. So a person will do certain moves. He'll move with his guf in a certain way when he knows that when he's trained his guf to mamshich that seichel in that way every time. But what kind of seichel is it? She'ein ze asmus ha-seichel kos. Not asmus ha-seichel, just the ha'or of seichel. Ve'etzem hus ha-seichel b'moich she'berosh tafka. Okay. V'chem misharei koiches k'mo midas. V'koich ha-tenua gufa. She'nimtza b'yad. V'gam b'regel. Ha'ein shava b'hem. And the koyach that comes from the moyach is not equal in all of them. The ikka koyach ha-tenua lifo v'lasos dava hu b'yad. Mashaba beregel hu behiluch levad. Right? So in other words, the ikka refined movements and things that the ability to write, the ability to draw, with most people is in their hand and not in their feet. Right? You do get artists that don't have hands that learn to draw with their feet, but it's very unusual. The ikka koyach is in the more refined koyachos and not in the less refined koyachos. Okay, and comes down, the further it comes down, the more the or is mismait, and therefore the less it's able to be poil its inyan. Okay. And that's because of the or that's malubash in a kli is the or pnimi. Okay, the kitzer is va'ikohu ki hakochas and pnimi and hanu mugbalim be'etzem. All kochas are mugbal. Va'nefesh she bilti mugbelas koleles besoicha kochas mugbalim. It has in it the kochas mugbalim. Rakbi is kalalusim ba'etzem el bilti mugbalim. But when they're in the etzem, they're bilti mugbal. In other words, when the colors are in the white light, they're all white light. You don't see the colors. It's only when it splits through a prism and it's melubash in different madregas of gashmias that the light splits up into various things. He has red light and there's blue light and so on and so forth. In order for the koyach to be melubash in an aver, it comes about through tzimtzum hanefesh. But if you open ha'evorim, who tzimtzum ba'or nefesh, according to the refinement of the particular aver, so too is the tzimtzum in the or hanefesh.
Well, this is very interesting that in klolos, the koyches in the nefesh have an inyan of koyches mugbalim klolos in the nefesh already, right? They're already mugbal.
Yes.
But then the nefesh has to be mitzumtzum in order for the koyach to come into the aver, which in other words already seems to have a state of hagbala before it's tzimtzum. Intrinsically. So that's a very interesting thing. But now the nefesh has to be mitzumtzum, which is not the koyach itself, but the nefesh has a separate thing. I don't understand exactly. I'm just trying to bring out a point.
We'll see it much more clearly when he spells it out in terms of the oiris. And first of all, the oiris have a tziyur in them. There's a tziyur in the oir before it's melubash in the kli. And therefore, that particular or is melubash in that particular kli. The or chokhmah is melubash in the kli of chokhmah. It's not like the Ramak said, where it's all the same water. It's just that the kalim are different. The Arizal explains that there are already hagbolas in the oil. Okay, true. In order for the particular oil to be melubash in the kli, it has to go through a process of timtum. But that timtum is not giving it suddenly a color when it comes into that particular kli, like water would get the color of red in a red kli. No, it's that the red is matim to the red kli. The red in the or is matim to the red kli. Only what, in order to be melubash in the kli, it still has to go through a timtum. And we'll see that later on.
Well, the tzimtzum already seems to be an innate part of what is in as beklolis already there. In other words, it's like you're saying, it's all the same thing. The tzimtzum or the nefesh is the same as the hagbala of the koyach as it's kolol in the nefesh. Right,
and that goes all the way back to the Indian of the Rishima and the Orin Sof. We'll get there. It's a long process till we get there, but that's what he explains. Yes. Good. Okay, boys. If anyone wants to know, I'll put it up on the website. Decoded on.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, guys. Thank you.